Hey everybody, this is Mike Lapon from Symphony X and Mike Lapon's Silent Assassins, and this is SAGAS.
What's going on, everybody? This is Corbin the Serpentine Skipwith.
This is Rand the Berserker Marabou, and this is
SAGAS.
SAGAS, breaking the law, breaking the law.
Well, for one of the band members, that was literal. So I want to start off by the way we normally do. And by the way, if you guys are sick of this announcement before each episode, just skip 2 minutes ahead. I'm pretty sure I don't spend more than 2 minutes on John, and if I do, it's way too much time that he deserves. So 2 minutes, I'm sure we'll be talking about something else about it. But John Sorrell, Morgul. So John Sorrell makes his own hard copies of everything from reviews, interviews, artwork, and even a serial killer card game, which he'll give you a new character each month or each release. I got Charles Manson the first time. He did tell me who I was getting the second time, but I forgot. So it's pretty cool. Like I said, it has sick artwork, sick reviews, and how we fit into this is I've agreed to do the schedule is I've agreed to do reviews for each of his Morgrots in the future, and in return, two things. Firstly, he will put the SAGAS, as you'll see, I think he'll put the SAGAS logo on. He'll represent SAGAS on each upcoming Morgrot issues, which is sick. And secondly, I agreed to do all the reviews for free for his Morgrot, as long as in return he watches any New Japan match of my choosing, which he's already cashed in next month. So that's, but yeah, so it's a cool little arrangement. Why not? I don't mind doing reviews, and for a good friend and for someone who actually has a really good thing going on. If I'm not mistaken, he has, I think, a live concert in the works, like a kind of like a festival thing for the Morgrot, if I'm not mistaken. And if I'm not, that's a big deal. He has a big heart and a really cool creative mind, and one of the darkest metal genre listeners I know of. So he doesn't have any soft. It's either country or the darkest metal you've ever heard. So he actually dresses like a cowboy too. So that's kind of cool. I've interviewed him. Go check out my YouTube. And obviously for the Morgott, the link will be above. And yeah, hopefully that wasn't 2 minutes, because fuck you, John. Now, go to Morgott. Yes, be up top. Search out for Facebook, support him, and yeah, go get yourself either the previous issues if he has any left, or pre-order if there is an option for the latest issue coming out. Good old John. Okay, nice. So last week I ran it solo. Fuck you, Redna. I ran it solo. We had great legendary metal. Well, he was the drummer of Manowar, for one album or a few albums, and now he is the singer and drummer, I'm pretty sure, of the Angels of Babylon band. And we talked about the album Thunder God. We also talked about his career. We talked about music in general, the state of music, just what it's like to be a musician in this day and age. And very insightful, very interesting. He's a cool dude. Yeah, so go check it out if you haven't already. It's already up. Yeah, a fun 40 minutes, 34 minutes something. Yeah, go check that out. And anyway, he was the guest, and he recommended the album we'll be talking about today, which is British Steel by none other than Judas Priest, making this the third time for me talking about the same artist, and the second time officially for you. So happy days. And if you guys don't remember, we talked about the reason why this is the second time. We talked about Five Hell, which was my first introduction to them, and I've always wanted a reason to go back to their old discography, but I knew I would be super lazy unless I was forced to, which happened to be the case here, so I'm happy I was forced to. Yeah, so anyway, that's my little spiel. I know your experience with this album already, so either, I guess, try to tell everyone what your original thoughts were when you first listened to it, or your refurbished thoughts revisiting it all the years later.
Yeah, nice. Good shout out for I was disappointed I missed himself last week. What a legend. I would have loved to have had a chat, but I was a bit too otherwise engaged, but this is a great album to shout out. Like I really was really surprised and really happy to, like you said, to be able to go back and look at old Judas Priest. And you know, there, like I was three when I wasn't even born when this album came out. I was three in 1983. I was born, so this was 3 years before I was born. Is what I was trying to say. And but I think the song "Breaking the Law" has been played so worldwidely, like on the regular. It's just one of those songs that everybody seems to know, but they might not know the artist or they might not know the history behind the song or any of that kind of jazz. But it's a household song, like a household name. And it's amazing when you listen to the song, it's that big of a song. It's still killer. When you listen to it, it's still like this rip roaring, old heavy metal song by absolute legends. And yeah, man, it was so nice to get back listening to this. I hadn't listened to it for a couple of years now. So I said to you, I just need to revisit it, between that and I won't get into my favorites just yet, but Living After Midnight, another absolute legendary song. So yeah, no, it was a really interesting time for the band. A lot was going on. But yeah, I wonder why is Kenny, isn't it? Did he say why he picked this album in particular?
Nah, he just liked the album.
All right.
Yeah, and said that it was an amazing album, and yeah, I agree. So yeah, so first of all, as you said, made by a bunch of legends and Dave Holland. And this is actually the first album about him. If you want to learn more about him against your own judgment, click on him and you'll find it. Anyway, it was the first one with him on it. And interestingly, because as I just said a few minutes ago, repeating myself, my first experience with them was Firepower. I saw someone review it years ago, and I was like, oh, I've heard of this band. Apparently the new album's really good, so I went on to it, and yeah. So this is 1980, 2016, so this was, what, 26, 96? About 30 years, no, more than 30 years later, or back this album was since then. And one thing I was thinking, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm just in my own head, but I thought to myself, like, somehow on this album, Rob Halford sounds older than he was on Firepower. I'm like, how the fuck does he do like a Benjamin Button effect? He sounds younger, but yeah, no, I mean, he sounds the same, but a bit, I don't know why, but a bit older, like a bit more raspy, like he sounds, just a bit, which doesn't even make sense how he sounds younger. But no, this is a great album. A few things to point out. So, firstly, the first thing which I found cool about this album is, well, a few things. Number one, the recording apparently took place December 1979 until February 1980. So this was done in like 3 months. Tops the recording process, which is pretty crazy considering what came out. And considering the fact that for a long period of time, at least from what I can see here, this is the 6th album, 1980, and it seems like they were releasing every year from the live album before that, Unleashed in the East, which actually can be taken pretty wrong if you look at it out of context. That sounds pretty wrong. An American band, Unleashed in the East. And then you got Point of Entry, 1981, 1979. So, like, if this band is releasing like yearly, like that's pretty crazy. Like at least back in the early days, like keeping the consistency up and everything. The second thing that I found cool is that they were well, first of all, inspired by AC/DC on this one. Instead of like apparently they had a more darker lyrical themes, which I wouldn't know. I haven't listened past this one, before this one. And the fact that they were recording in the Beatle Ringo Starr's home. Which, I mean, inspired by AC/DC, recording in the Beatles, Ringo, like, it's just a funny, like, it's just I mean, not funny, it's just like a cool kind of environment to make this record for, especially when apparently they're toning it down and, I guess making a switch from the, as it says here, dark lyrical themes. So, and they say established one like Killing Machine, which I haven't heard yet. But yeah, it just sounds like an interesting set of circumstances. Quick recording process, Ringo, fucking, and the fact that apparently, well, at least how it says here, how like digital shit wasn't really done, digital recordings wasn't done that much. It's like they were like smashing like milk bottles and stuff, like actual milk bottles. So it's like it's cool. And the fourth thing before I shut up, it's like after this album was released, apparently it was sold for $4 pounds, not dollar, £4. That's funny. Like fucking £4. I mean, I'm not sure what the equivalent of that would be back then in the 80s, but like, I mean, when I used to collect CDs, they were released like 20, like new releases, like 2025, at least Australian. But yeah, it's just crazy, like $4 for like a brand new like Judas Priest album. Like that's pretty funny. So yeah, it's just a bunch of just the background and stuff had a bunch of cool stuff to talk about.
I actually heard somewhere that there was a version of the album called British Steel, spelled Steal, because it was so cheap. So I don't know whether that was folklore or whatever, but anybody's interested, look into it. But yeah, man, Starling Studios, Ringo Starr, it was actually in his home, which is crazy. Like, oh man. And then to think that it was recorded by none other than the man that's recorded quite a lot of their albums is Tom Allom. Tom Allom is just an absolutely gifted human being when it comes to recording. I mean, like the list of stuff that this man has produced, album wise, I'll name off a few: Judas Priest, obviously, Black Sabbath, Def Leppard. I'm pretty sure he's worked with Zeppelin. I'm not 100% sure there, but I do know that the engineer that worked in the studio with them, Lou Austin, has worked with Deep Purple, who we both love as well. John Lennon, obviously, Ringo Starr, except who we spoke about on the cast. And it's just like to have them two boys working on this record, you knew it was going to be something special. Like, and as you said, like back, that was before digital or sampling or any of that kind of stuff. So they had to use organic sounds, like, which, to me isn't that alien really, because even in the 90s as a kid, when you had no fucking money and you were recording on like a karaoke machine or a tiny little 8-track, you had to make these sounds as well, but I suppose back in them days, in like 10 years before that, when they had money for all the top-notch equipment, it's just interesting. Even still, they had to do that. But speaking of old technology, they used to have instead of being mixed or edited or anything like that, it was called cut. Anybody doesn't know. So they had an engineer that was like the cut engineer, and he basically mastered it by cutting the tape, which is crazy. Oh, the pressure must have been unbelievable. Like, imagine a band recording on a tape and you're cutting the tape and sticking it back together, and oh Jesus Christ, that would have killed me having to do it. Imagine you cut wrong and you fucked up the whole thing. And tape was it is still, but tape is very expensive and you wouldn't want to waste it, But I heard an interesting, this is going off topic altogether, but how Dave Grohl used to record at the beginning of his solo kind of music or Foo Fighters was he'd be in the studio with Nirvana, and if there was a little bit of tape left at the end, he'd go, just give us a couple of minutes, I want to throw down a couple of tracks. So he'd just throw down a few and he'd get like 3 minutes of tape. And he's like, there's a song I recorded by myself, Anyway, that's a different story, different band. But yeah, so Ray Staff is the man that was the master and engineer and mixed and cut all the stuff. And he's worked with Led Zeppelin and Rolling Stones and Black Sabbath and Muse in later years. But it's just unbelievable the caliber behind this record. And even the British Steel, the iconic cover with the razor blade was made by a Polish painter. I think he's done loads of different artwork for many famous bands and stuff. So the caliber on that, and then you're like, that's behind the scenes stuff, but the musicians in this band, this is my favorite lineup, apart from maybe one or two unsavory characters. One's an unsavory character, but when Glenn and KK played together, it was just magic. Like them two guitar players together was like the perfect marriage. I know like anybody that's listened to old school rock and roll or 70s rock would know Tin Lizzy and their dual guitar sound. And that's something that's always tried to be emulated and stuff. But these boys were around that time doing that as well. And they're so underrated. Like they are rated, they're highly rated, but they should be rated even higher. You know, the subtlety of their playing was just a whole other world of just like they could just make a song breathe. And what's the song on this album? They do I think it's Metal Gods. And Metal Gods has this really, really cool echo guitar. It's like this guitar chords that mimic the vocal passage and just make it like an echo of it. And like anybody that knows the song goes like it's a singing like Gods of Steel, and then the guitars just do this bow, 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 but it's like a harmony chord. And oh man, just those slight little subtle little things is what makes this record great. And this formation of musicians together with that incredible group of people behind this album. Sure, Jesus, no wonder we're still talking about it now. Like,
please tell me more about this iconic band, Tin Lizzy. No.
Tin Lizzy, yeah.
No. First of all, first thing, why the assumption that I like Deep Purple? I prefer Whitesnake, but that's a whole other argument entirely. I'll never forgive you for that one thing you know about. But I'm sure one day we'll cover it. Whitesnake. Secondly, it's just a bunch of like when I was doing my research on it, I was so happy to find out because I can say this because I already have another worst contender anyway, so it's fine. But I am so happy to find out that the fucking Red, White, and Blue wasn't the original closer, because I was like, this song, it's not bad, but it's just like because back before I researched it, I was like, man, what an anticlimactic. Like, I get it, it's patriotic, it's whatever. I'm not American. I'm not very heavily patriotic, really, to begin with. I love where I come from, whatever, New Zealand. But it's just like, I don't think I'm heavily patriotic in anything. So it's just like, whenever I hear songs like that, it doesn't really get to me. So like, when I now know it's not Steel is the last song, but when I thought that was the last song, that was going to be my easy Devil's Advocate choice. I'm like, fuck this song. Like, what an anticlimactic way to end the album. But since it's not, I'm very happy. Not that the singing's bad, obviously. It's just like, those kind of songs I'm not really that keen on. But, it's interesting because, you already talked about songs like Living After Midnight, which kind of reminds me, every time I read that title, it reminds me of, what was it? 2 Minutes to Midnight? Iron Man. 2 Minutes to Midnight. But yeah, Living After Midnight, it to me, compared to the rest of the album, sounds like I wrote down my notes, like a more contemporary, like poppy sound. Not, like almost like a Beatles influence. It kind of reminded me of like if Judas Priest tried a Beatles song, that's what in my head, that's what it sounded like compared to the rest of the album. You got the song United, which to me has the best vocal layout on the whole album. Like, it's just Rob Halford just singing fucking angelic beautifully. It's an amazing song. Well, in general, it's already an amazing song, but the vocals just make it like 10 times better, just like the way he sings in it, especially the first 2 notes he hits, 2 sentences. It's just amazing. The song The Rage has some like, what sounds like, all I can think of every time I wrote in my notes, hypnotic bass lines, and what sounds like a fantastic like prog intro, almost prog elements. But the bass, anytime I hear bass like that, the only person it reminds me of, not that I remember his name, but the bassist from Korn. Every time I hear like very low, like starting, I just think of Korn because like they have that so often. I forgot what the guy's name is, but yeah, like it's just you got so many different, so many different textures, so many different And obviously the hit single that everyone knows, as you said, Breaking the Law. And which is interesting because on Wikipedia, it says that's the first track, but on my Spotify, it says Rapid Fire is the first track. So that's interesting. I mean, not that, it doesn't really matter. But, yeah, I mean, Breaking the Law, I don't think this is my first time hearing it. Surely somewhere in the past I would have heard it somewhere. But it's my first time, like, paying attention to it. And yeah, obviously it's a great track, you know. Very, you know, very funky, you know, great, catchy chorus, you know. Yeah, everything about it's great. You don't have to be able to be wise. That's like it's like a cool little, you know, like a folks message, like a wise, like, you don't have to be able to be wise. Little did he know that 36 years later he would be fucking like old and wise, which is pretty funny. The closer's great. I mean, yeah, I mean, like the actual closer still is a great. It kind of what was it? It kind of reminds me of a closer of an album we covered a while ago. Like it reminded me of like the it was an album that we covered in the past that like made me I forgot what it was, but there was a, you know, it reminded me of an episode we did ages ago where it had like a really nice like closing track. And yeah, like I said, just as a whole, you know, there's very little I can say bad about the album, especially now that I know that fucking Patriotic song is not even part of the album. The Grinder song, I mean, the Grinder live, yeah, that was cool, you know. I mean, obviously, again, not part of the album, but it's still cool to hear, you know. And it's cool that I read that when was it? 2009, 30th anniversary. Wait, if that's 2009, fuck, they've been what 40 years now. If that's 30th anniversary, fucking hell. Anyway, no more than that, like 43, fucking hell, almost 50 years. That's insane. But yeah, how they played this album live in its entirety. You know, I've never experienced it yet. I mean, I haven't been to many live shows, but like, I would love to see a band I like play an album from start to finish. That's like my dream to go and see a band. I mean, the best metal concert I've ever been to was Tear by far, but it was just like, yeah, I reckon that'd be so cool, and especially this album, you know, to hear that live. And considering somehow Rob Halford just sounds younger and younger, it doesn't really make sense, but you'd somehow get a more clearer version of it, which doesn't make much sense. But the one thing I will say is, track 7, you don't have to be old. You don't have to be old to be wise. I wish one of the band members took that to heart. But anyway, I'll leave it at
that. Right. I'll try not to, divulge any more information on that particular character. But yeah, no. Do you know Living After Midnight, right? It's interesting, right? Or I think they were in the studio and they were staying in the studio, sleeping there and all that kind of stuff while they were working on the record. And Glenn just kicked in the door one night, apparently into Rob's room, and just goes, "You have to listen to this." And he plays this riff, you know, the Living After Midnight, the down, 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 down. And Rob just turns around and says, "Geez, what are you, living after midnight?" And Glenn goes, "That's the name of the song." And then they went, you know, I love all those kind of little stories, you know. But the interesting thing about this album is obviously they hit mega mainstream kind of hits with Living After Midnight and Breaking the Law. But it was from that moment, it was like their next album after this was when they really kind of tried to sound commercial. They didn't actually mean to do that in this one. Like, they thought, you know, this is very rebellious, breaking the law. It's just that they're so good at writing melodies that it just happened that it became catchy and radio friendly, you know. But so I think the Red, White, and Blue song might be throwing you off. The boys are from Birmingham. They're from Birmingham in England, and the British flag is the red, white, and blue. And I was also listening to that as well, and I was like, what are they singing about? Singing about America? I was like, these Brummies singing about America. I was like, then I realized, you know, the British flag is a mixture of the three flags. But yeah, so I wanted to talk about as well, just before we go into any more stuff about this album. Remember we were chatting before about Judas Priest, and we were talking about the time when Rob Halford left the band, because it was an accident. He didn't actually mean to leave the band. He just suggested, I want to do a solo album. So the label, I think it was Interscope or Columbia, they turned around and they said, well, that means you have to leave the band. You can't do a solo thing. And he wasn't actually saying, all of a sudden he was like forced out. So he was like, right, fine, I'll go make my solo album. And he wanted to make this other harder hitting record, And I think this was in the late 90s. And he came out with a band, and I wanted to mention them the last time, but I forgot. I think I forgot. They were called Fight. And they have this really killer heavy. They actually brought out something in the late 2000 and 2008, I think it was. But it's definitely something to look into. If you're into heavy riffs, like heavy or more modern riffs with Rob's voice on it, I highly recommend all the listeners go check that out. But yeah, just chunky riffage. But yeah, it was when Rob left. I just wanted to get that in there before I forgot, because the last time after we got off, I was like, oh, I forgot to talk about Fight. Absolutely deadly. And another guy who I probably said this in the last time, but I want to say it again because I love mentioning that movie Rockstar. It seems to come up a lot. But the movie Rockstar was based on Ripper Owens' life, but loosely based. When he was a kid or a young guy in the audience, and he was like the biggest fan, and he was singing to Rob Halford in the audience, and they were looking for a new singer. Then they took him on, and it was kind of based around him. Which it's funny how many times that movie has come up on the podcast. I know it's me that brings it up, but it's relevant. It seems to be fucking relevant all the time. But the album name actually came from, I think, the guitarist Glenn Tipton. He worked in like a metal factory, because steelworks was like a big thing in England back in them days, especially in Birmingham. And so I think that's where the name of the band came from, or not name of the record. The name of the band came from it's a really interesting story about the name. It'll come to me later, but it's not what you think. But yeah, man, I really, really enjoyed. Like you were chatting about Two Eyes. I actually really enjoyed the kind of 70s vocals that Rob did on that tune. Like, it's like there's it's like the chorus. I don't know what he did, but I know this was 1980, and 1970 isn't that far back, or the mid 70s. It's only a couple of years, but in the progression of music, every decade, as we know, hitting the tail end of the decade pretty much turns into the next decade of music. So they were definitely in a world full of 80s music and 80s inspiration and all that stuff going on in the world. So for him and this record is pretty 80s metal, but he kind of reached back and grabbed a few kind of like vocal techniques from the classic era of the late 60s, early 70s. And I really enjoyed it. I loved hearing that and that. And then it went on to Rage, there's 2 songs after that. And that has like a total classic 70s rock vibe, classic rock vibe. And I absolutely love that. It's refreshing on the album. Obviously, Red, White and Blue, that Christmas Carol national anthem. Star Wars theme. I don't know if you recognize the guitar at the start is the same fucking few notes as Star Wars, man. I swear, it's just they totally ripped off Judas Priest for Star Wars, man. Because Star Wars came out in 1983, so there's no way they didn't rip them off. But who was it? John Williams, I think, was the composer then. So John Williams, you ripped off Glenn's guitar. But yeah, man, Grinder is another massive song for for sitting there, Star Wars. Grinder is one of those songs that they still play to this day. It's like a massive anthem, for their live set. And I don't know, Rapid Fire is just straight up. It's like something that inspires me. Like, it's got that Motorhead kind of vibe, real fast pace, straight fucking kicker, which, you know, Judas Priest are one of the best bands at doing. You know, it's great to hear. There's 2 songs on the album that have that fast Judas Priest kind of vibe to it. Rapid Fire and Stealer is just, you know, and it's littered with bitchin' solos. There's like killer musicianship all over this album. And I have to say, even though there's an elephant in the room that we've not wanted to talk about, David Holland actually done quite well on this record, despite what may or may not happen in his future life after this. But he had a really unusual, you know, I wouldn't say technique, but even just his positioning on the kit, it was almost like as if he was standing up. He had the seat at a really unusual angle, and he was up very high, like the cymbals were just here at his head rather than further and higher. And it was really unusual, I suppose you could say, technique or positioning to play the drums. And there was some really memorable drum beats on this album that people have ripped off still to this day. There's one beat, that Cancer Bats, even like a modern, you know, stoner, grungy metal, whatever you want to call them, stoner, grungy metal. That's probably a terrible description for Cancer Bats. Sorry, Cancer Bat fans, but they definitely were inspired still. So this album is still inspiring bands to this day. Absolutely deadly.
It would be funny if you bring up this album, we find out like hundreds of episodes later, it was just like your slow descent, your slow dementia descent. Like it's like they went, oh, the movie about this, and then you know, episode 100, have I talked about this? And then like episode 200, my name's Ren, I love this movie. It's just like a constant descent. That would be hilarious.
Probably have.
Nice. Well, let's get on to our sponsorships. Why don't you start and tell us who you want to give a shout out to today?
I just quickly want to give a shout out to my boys in Ulster Mead Co. As always, they're still working on the mead, Corbin, so don't worry, bro. Just a quick shout out to them, but I also, not that I want to step on Morgrot's toes, totally different style of magazine. I want to give a shout out to Power Play magazine. This week's edition, or this month's edition, is a issue 262, and it's available on their website. They gave a lovely review for the latest Red Marabou and the Berserkers album, and we got eight power points out of 10, which I was absolutely amazed by. So thank you so much to that Martin Harris for that incredible review, and thank you so much. Wanted to give them a shout.
Ironically, they gave you a better score than apparently Sputnik Music gave Judas Priest's British Steel. They gave it a 2 out of 5. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. It doesn't say why on here, but yeah, interesting. All right. So I have 2 I want to shout out today. So the first of all, let me just actually, in the meantime, while I'm bringing that up, I want to give a shout out to rockxl.com. So this will be a new sponsorship. We'll just rotate different sponsorships, because we can't go through them all every episode. It'll be very boring. Rockxl.com. So it is rock merchandise in extended sizes. So Tom Hazard, legendary metal figure in the metal community, he wants to let you know that the shop, the Rock XL collection, for a huge selection of officially licensed music, film, TV, and pop culture appeal and merchandise available in all sizes, including extended sizes up to 6XL. So you don't have to worry if you're a big guy. No one judges here. You'll find your size at rockxl.com. Now, if you're wondering what kind of bands they have already, for merch, they have Motley Crue, Kiss, Iron Maiden, Dio, Ozzy Osbourne, Def Leppard, Misfits, Poison, and more. And I've already made him aware that he should make a Judas Priest one. So hopefully that comes out soon. Yeah, so go check it out if you're a guy that, or a girl. If you're a metal fan that might be, for whatever reason, worried or self-conscious that you'll never be able to find merch the size to fit you, you don't have to worry anymore, because the link above, go onto that, type it in, and like I said, after 6XL, you don't have to worry anymore. So go rock out at rockxl.com. Thank you very much, Tom Hazard, for giving me the opportunity to talk about that. Now, the other one I want to shout out is actually a very interesting one, and it is locally to the USA, and actually even more locally to Philadelphia. But I want to shout out Matthew Tubbs and his plumbing business. Now, I don't know if we have anyone listening from Philadelphia. No idea. But, as this podcast grows, we'll get more and more listeners. And that will be the time when you will need some plumbing. Everyone, it's what makes the world go around. And this guy, Matthew Tubbs, is such a hardworking, dedicated plumber. It's his passion to do what he does. He's very good at it. And, he'll give you the best quotes. He'll actually care about what he's doing. He's not just going to do it for the money. He's going to look into it, make sure you're getting the best work possible. And him and his little small team in Philadelphia, they do really great work. And so if you're from Philadelphia, go check out the website that I will find and put above here. And I know this is only a local shout out, but I've developed a few new friends over the past few months, and I figured, why not help them out if possible, if we have any Philadelphia fans in here. And even if you're not from there personally, if you're listening to this and know someone who does live in Philadelphia, send them at least this website, and make sure they get the best plumbing possible for their home needs. Yeah, that's all I have to.
Sick. Well, don't forget, Matthew will I just had a fucking brain aneurysm, I think. Well, as Matthew would say, don't be a chump. Let him unplug that dump.
I've never heard him say that in my life, but sure. Let's go with that. I think you're on some pain medication.
Well, I am, but that's his slogan on his Facebook or Instagram page.
There you go.
If you're in Philadelphia. So anyway. Actually, speaking of Philadelphia, there's a new Always Sunny in Philadelphia season coming out in 7th of June. That's going to be awesome.
Oh, there you go. Great segue.
It's time for the Devil's Advocate. The Devil's Advocate!
Very good. Very good. I promise I'm not doing a stereotypical Indian.
Very good.
Very good. Imagine if that's what gets us cancelled. Very good. Thank you. Come again. Anyway, Devil's Advocate. What a fun. And I always mention it's so sad I never got to invent Devil's Advocate talking about the first episode. How many songs I would have shit on. This song fucking sucks. No. But anyway, Devil's Advocate. Well, my least favorite song, as I just made it away a few minutes ago, would have been that patriotic song. But now that I know it's officially on the album, I can give that a pass. And my new least favorite song, Breaking the Law. Can you imagine that was my real choice? People will be like, what the fuck? No. It's not. Instantly Philly. My real least favorite song is Grinder. Not the live version, that doesn't count. That's on the album. The official song. Why? Well, my reasons are not really that interesting. It's more, I just think it's too much of a slow burner, and I just don't think it fits the pace of the album. Similar as to why I would have chosen the outro K-Joke song had it been on the album. I just was a bit too slow for the pace of the album. I mean, if it was at the start and then the rest was what it was, then it would have been fine. But yeah, just the fact that it's like, where is it? It's fourth. Yeah, so it's like almost the middle of the album. It's just like, I don't know. It's like someone like went from fourth gear to first. And it's like, fuck. It's like, or like 100 to 30 or whatever. So yeah, and that's the only reason I'm choosing it. If that wasn't on there, and I wouldn't have known what I would have chosen. So it's nitpicking again as always, obviously. So favorite track, and this is actually quite funny saying what I'm about to say now, because of the reason it's my favorite song is because of in Harry Potter terms, the man whose name we shall not speak is Rapid Fire. Now, I love Rapid Fire because of the drums, which is ironic. Finding out what I do now. But the drums are sick because I think it's like halfway through the song. Actually, there's a little drum, what kind of an interlude, like a drum progression interlude thing towards the start. But then there's also one towards the middle of the track, which is what I'm referring to the most. It's like this like drum segue that goes into like the second half of the song. And I fucking love it because you don't hear that much anymore. I mean, I'm trying to think on the top of my head, very memorable like drum like segues or drum interludes. And yeah, on top of my head, I can't really think of too many, you know. I think there was that song, what was it? And obviously completely different. I think it's the first song, Black Dog off Led Zeppelin 4. It has that like jump. I think of the right song. And then it has that like rock and roll. Yeah, so that comes to mind. But like, it's and plus that's at the start. That's not quite in the middle. But like, I can't think of too many like in the middle like drum progression interludes. And the way it was done is sick. It was like how they dedicated like 20. It sounded like 10, 20 seconds of just pure jump and then just goes like straight into it. Kind of thing. Yeah, so that was sick. There is another song stuck in my head that I'm trying to think of, where it has like drum interludes, but yeah, so that's why Rapid Fire is my favorite, despite the guy himself. But yeah, so that's cool.
Sick. Well, I had the same problem with you as you did with Red, White, and Blue. I really thought that was an odd song, but yeah, if it was a bonus track, it kind of makes sense. But so yeah, I mean, this is such a stellar album. It's so hard to pick anything bad. I mean, even that song is Red, White, and Blue. It's actually brilliant for what it is. It's just it's too much of a Christmas Carol, national anthem, Star Wars song for me. Even though this came before Star Wars, but yeah, I think I might have to go for, if that's the case, then United, only because of the chorus. The rest of the song is absolutely killer. It's very catchy. It was a single as well. They had This, Breaking the Law, and the obvious one that I can't fucking remember right now. Yeah, they were the singles, right? So yeah, Steeler was another fast-paced ripper of a track, which could have taken I'm gonna go with United. Fuck it, just because of the chorus. It's just I mean, I love the vibe. I love the message. I love the message. I love being united. I love people coming together and camaraderie and all that shit. But unfortunately, just the delivery for me was a little bit anyway. But my favorite song on this record, 100%, Rapid Fire almost took it because it's such a great song. And it's the first one on the album and just kicks the face off you. But Gods of Steel is such an incredible song. And it's actually quite iconic because the song itself is where Rob ended up getting the nickname as the Metal God. You know, everybody calls Rob Halford the Metal God. And that's where he got that. And as far as I know, they penned this song specifically with getting him the nickname. Their first manager, I think, for a while was trying to get them all to have nicknames, and the only one that stuck was KK. So the rest of them didn't. So they were like, right, Rob deserves. So he's the Metal King. But the reason why I love that song as well is also on the chorus when he sings the Metal God lyric. It's so metal tone. We are metal. We are the metal gods. It's monotone. It's smooth. It's just chilled. It's not like you can imagine the song these days. If it was called Metal Gods, it would be like Metal Gods. It'd be like really, really over the top heavy, like, and it was just perfect. I just thought it was great. And like I said earlier on about the repeating chorus harmonies with it's like almost like a question answer, but it was like an answer because it just repeated like an echo passage. Like, it was really beautiful. One of my favorite, if not my favorite, Judas Priest song in general. So absolutely loved it. Can't get enough of it. But like I said, I had loads of contenders in this album for favorite. Breaking the Law obviously is an absolute classic. So what an album. Great choice. Happy days.
That actually reminded me of I remember one time on the radio show The Bonfire, which has Big J Okerson from Legion of Skanks as one of the hosts. And he made a Rob Halford gay joke on air, and Rob Halford called in and said that he couldn't stop laughing at the joke. That was hilarious. And then in a funny twist of fate, lead singer of Skid Row, Sebastian called in the same network radio show and was very angry that Big J would make a homophobic joke about Rob Halford, and that became this whole thing. And Big J is like, dude, Rob Halford called in. He said he was fine with it, and they loved the joke. Why do you care? Like, yeah, it was this whole mix-up. It was a big situation. It's pretty funny. And from what I've heard, not just from that, but in general, I've heard Sebastian Bach is pretty interesting guy from what I've heard. So I don't know much about his music, Skid Row, but yeah. Anyway, it's just a funny story that reminded me of Rob Halford. That apparently he has a sense of humor. And
he's a very down to earth.
I just imagine him like hearing it on the radio and then calling straight away, just like laughing. He's like, "This is hilarious." Yeah.
Speaking of funny stories, though, there was a bit of controversy with The Simpsons as well. Did you hear that? There was I think there was an episode of The Simpsons, season 25 or something. Like, geez, I didn't even know there were that many fucking seasons. But like, there was one episode when they called Judas Priest death metal, and I don't know who said it or whatever, but they were like, well, Judas Priest isn't death metal. That's absurd. So in the next episode, Bart, you know the way Bart writes on the chalk. He wrote 100 times, Judas Priest is not that metal. Black metal or whatever they call them.
Like, why was that controversial?
I don't know. I suppose they didn't want
Everyone knows he's not death metal.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, but yeah, it was just funny that it was like written on the board. Yeah, anyway, good stuff. Good
old Judas Priest.
What else?
Yeah, it's funny. I saw, and this is completely off topic, but in Family Guy, when Quagmire's playing golf, and like he's narrating to himself, he's like talking to himself. You can hear it, and he's like, oh, on that one fateful day, I was playing golf. My ball went too far off course, and then you see the ball hitting a plane, and the plane going into the Twin Towers, and he's like, they still blame the Muslims. Oh man, Quagmire. It's funny. It's all Quagmire's fault. Yes. So do you want to talk about who we're having next? And in case you forgot, the album you want to cover is The Balance of Everything.
Yes, well, I just remembered where Judas Priest got their name from. It was a Bob Dylan song from 1967 called The Ballads of Frankie Lee and Judas Priest. That's one theory. There's another theory, but that's one theory, and I like that theory. Next week, we are having our friend, am I correct? Our friend Josh Freeman. friend of ours and a stellar musician. I've known him for quite some time, and so has Corbin. We're both signed to the same record label, United Music Mafia, and before that we were signed to another label. So we've had quite a cool little journey, together with the music, and it's so cool to have him on chatting next week about his project, his band. There's Only One Elvis. He's also in a band called Modown, and he's just an all-round stellar individual, really humble, really talented. And as Corbin will display there, he has a clothing line or company called DWI, and they make these lovely shirts and t-shirts for us.
Yes.
Absolute gentleman. Can't wait to chat to him next week. So bring it on.
And what album are we covering?
What album are we covering? His album,
wow.
Is it on?
You don't remember the name of it? It is his album.
Josh?
Do you remember the name?
Yes.
All right, what is it? This is why I had it set up. The balance of everything.
I'm going through tunnel.
The balance of everything. The balance of everything.
Yeah, of course. And with the cool artwork with the woman on the front, it's all surreal and shit.
I don't know if it's a woman, I can't tell. But it's a figure.
Well, it's a woman.
It's a person. It's a person. Anyway, yeah. I had it set up on here in case you forgot what you did. So it's The Balance of Everything by There's Only One Elvis, aka Josh Freeman by himself.
Yes.
Yeah. So there you go. We'll be having them on next week. And until then, as we always say here on SAGAS, same time, same place, or something.